welcome back to the Two Norries podcast. I'm your co-host Timmy Long, and here we have James Leonard.
Hi Tim, happy Easter.
Right, today we have two very special guests. We have Alex Cooney and Georgie Cooney. They both work for a charity by the name of CyberSafe Bullying. I bet to get that right.
CyberSafeKids.
CyberSafeKids, sorry. And Alex is the co-founder and the CEO, and Georgie is one of the trainers. So can you tell us a little bit about how the charity started, and now we'll get into what you do?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So we set up the charity 6.5 years ago, so September 2015. And it was really focused on children and equipping children for the online world. So our mission was to help them navigate the online world safely and in a smart way. And we wanted to work with parents and educators and pretty much anyone working with children, because we saw how important they were as kind of conduits to children. What we feel is that children just are not being sufficiently well prepared for the online world, and yet they have huge access to it. So we start young. So we're in primary schools. We're talking to kids aged between 8 and 13, and we're talking to their parents and their teachers, as well as lots of others, social workers, foster carers, and so on. We've spoken to 36,500 children to date, aged between 8 and 13, and we gather data as well. So every year we publish a report which gives the kind of trends and usage of children in this age group. So for example, last year's report, we know that 93% of children in that age group, aged 8 to 12, have their own smart device. So tablets, games consoles, smartphones are the three most popular. We know that 84% of them were signed up to at least one social media account. So we know that they're very active online users. They're very engaged. They're very enthusiastic about it. There's loads of exciting opportunities. I think we saw that through the COVID lockdown as well.
Yeah.
But there are risks and there are challenges. And that's why we're here. We want to mitigate against those risks as much as possible by equipping kids with these skills, but also their parents and carers and educators.
And what are some of the things that are really happening that are very, very evident these days? Is it getting worse?
Yeah, I mean, lockdown definitely exacerbated some of the more negative trends. But the things we need to worry about are on a kind of day-to-day level, children just sharing too much information about their personal lives, so their names, their addresses, where they go to school, all of this information being shared in this open forum, so unless their accounts are really locked down to just private, just friends only. And again, we know from our data that that's not always happening. About a third of the kids that we spoke to had friends and followers on social media accounts that they didn't know. So for example, so they're sharing too much information about themselves that could then impact them in their future lives. Or make them vulnerable in some way. Cyberbullying is a big concern. So that's happening in a lot of schools. Most teachers have dealt with at least one incident. In fact, most of them are dealing with like at least 2 or 3 incidents in the school year. So it's really impacting on the dynamic in the classroom. And then we've got kind of impacts on health and well-being. So children not getting enough sleep, coming into the classroom tired, fallouts over games and so on. And then you've got this other stuff like online grooming and extortion, which is the really scary end of the spectrum. And it's there that we saw some really, I suppose, scary increases during lockdown. So a huge increase in child sexual abuse material online, a huge increase on what were called online enticement reports. So contact by strangers to children to try and, form friendships or gather material. There's loads of positive ways and things about children being online and huge opportunity. And it's a different world, obviously, that our children are growing up in than the one we grew up in. But we equally need to prepare children for that and, ensure that they're equipped so that if they come across things online, or if someone makes contact with them, for example, that they know to talk to a trusted adult. So these are kind of some of the messages that we're trying to get across to children, but also to wider society, because we've got to make these changes and national legislation. So we're also campaigning for tighter legislation, stronger accountability, so that the likes of, the big social media companies, the big gaming companies, that they also are taking huge responsibility for what's happening on their platforms, and that they are as safe as possible for a child to be, on, because we know like a lot of these platforms are hugely popular with kids. A lot of the platforms that are based here in Ireland have their headquarters here, hugely popular with children. And often they're under the minimum age restriction, which is in most cases 13, and we're largely gathering data on 8 to 12-year-olds, and we know that they're accessing.
Is it a problem for because this digital age has just happened, so much has happened in the last 10 to 15 years. Like it's not uncommon out to see a toddler 2-3 years of age swiping a tablet, going through YouTube, where maybe the mother or the grandmother wouldn't have a clue what to do. So is it a problem that the parents just aren't aware of the dangers? They don't understand like that. They might think, gaming on the PlayStation is safe. At least he's not on Facebook, but you can be contacted through messaging on that too. So is it like we can provide cyber safety for kids, but it's only as strong as the parent, if it's enforced, if the parent has that awareness too?
So we're launching a campaign tomorrow, actually, which is called Same Rules Apply. And what we're trying to convey through that campaign, and we're hoping we can build on it over time, is that, there are loads of protections that we put in place for children in their best interests in the offline world. They can't drink, they can't drive, they can't smoke, and then we teach them to ride a bicycle. We teach them how to swim. We're preparing them for the world that they're going to encounter. We want them to have that independence. We want them to be able to go out and swim with their friends or go out on the bike with their friends. And we know as parents and carers and educators, we're going to have to do that. The legwork, the preparation to enable them to make the most of those opportunities. It's the same online. We really need to think, I think, as a society about what children are, the fact that they are online and the things that we're going to need to put in place to ensure that they can have the most positive experiences possible online. I think there's a real gap between what children are doing and what parents know. So, and there's also a convenience to it, right? And I'm as guilty as a parent of that as anyone.
Give them the tablet to keep them quiet.
The kids are quiet, right? I need to finish a piece of work or I need to get dinner on. So you know that you can stick them in front of something and it'll keep them quiet. And I think that the challenge with that is that, of course you can do it and we all do it, but it's about trying to keep on top of what are they watching? What are they doing? Who are they talking to? All these questions, ideally avoiding allowing them, especially when they're young. I'm not talking about, teenagers and older teenagers. You're going to have to allow a degree of independence and privacy there, but especially younger children, because we know so many young kids who are active online in bedrooms late at night. Even in my own daughter's peer group, like that she'll be getting messages that have come in, like she won't see them till the next morning, but they're coming in at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. That means those children are going to bed with those phones. And these are primary school age children. So it is a real challenge. Yes, there is a convenience to it, but we still have a responsibility as a society. And I'm not just I think an awful lot of responsibility goes on parents, but actually it's much broader than that. It's parents, educators, lawmakers, industry. We have this shared responsibility to ensure that children can make the most of the fantastic opportunities that none of us had growing up, but that they are equipped, they're prepared, and they're protected when they need to be. Because that's also, things will go wrong online. We're not going to be able to prevent every bad thing happening. So what we need to ensure is that the child at the center of that is as best protected as possible at that time,
Is it, do you think that internet addiction is going to become a big problem down the line?
Well, it's already been recognized by the WHO as, so gaming addiction specifically. And then the NHS kind of followed suit and set up addiction clinics. So I think they have a couple of addiction clinics in the UK. And it's tough because, we use that word addiction and actually what we mean in most cases is, it's very hard to distract, well, all of us actually, but young people in particular. You see them walking around town, right? Just like, they're crossing the street, like cars are coming and they're still like totally glued to their devices. So I think addiction is something very extreme. It's when literally all of your normal day-to-day functions are being interrupted. Your sleep is being interrupted, your healthy eating and exercise and your face-to-face social opportunities, which are so important, especially for young people growing up. All of those things are interrupted because you literally cannot step away from the device. The game, you don't want to drop the game. I mean, I've even heard about people wearing adult nappies to play games because they don't want to take the time out to go to the bathroom. So there's the
That must be a good game. That must be a very good game.
There's the extreme. But day to day, and we were actually chatting about this before we started, but we have to realize that there's a lot of applications on our devices that are designed to hold our time and attention. And our kids are grappling with that. We're grappling with that. You know, I don't know about you, but there are times where I find it hard to put down the phone or to, you know, that desire. I just want to send this text, or I just want to finish the email, or I just want to keep scrolling. You know, we are, you know, really trying to battle. So I think we need to put more onus on the designers of this technology. We need to put more, you know, many things in place to kind of put the checks and balances. So I'm not expressing this very well, but to put the checks and balances in place, you know, so that really question, is this how we want it to be? Is this okay that technology can, you know, manipulate us in this way? Do we want these checks and balances? You know, and this is what The Social Dilemma was about, right? The documentary, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have seen it. It's really gripping. But the guys behind that, you know, they were all designers for the likes of Google and Facebook, you know, and they realized that there was something wrong here. And actually they felt responsible, and, you know, they didn't want to be part of that. So they've come out since and said, let's use technology for good. Let's really challenge this and make this a better place for all of us to be, you know. And I think it's really important we start to answer some of these questions and put these guardrails in place before the next iteration, you know, the likes of the metaverse become a reality, because it's going to be extremely hard to keep our kids. You know, that's where they're going to want to be.
Do you think it's going to be possible to regulate big companies like Facebook and Google? Because if they make so much money off of the fact that we need to keep scrolling, and then they've some of the best scientists and psychologists in the world employed to come up with intuitive and creative ways to keep us scrolling, like, does that make your job, like, you're going up against juggernauts in the industry, in the tech industry? But do you think that change will come?
Well, it is coming. Whether it will be strong enough is the next question. So we have a bill in Ireland called the Online Safety and Media Regulation Bill, which sits in Catherine Martin's department. And that is likely to become law, you know, even as early as before the end of this year.
Brilliant.
And that, in theory, is going to regulate the online service providers and ensure that harmful content is addressed, right? So this is key. Like, well, first of all, there's this tricky area of what is harmful content, right? Illegal is easy, you know, like we know what's illegal, you know, a sexual image of a child is illegal and needs to be removed, and everyone's clear on those boundaries. But harmful is harder because it's often subjective, you know, like, well, so somebody was bullied, but the person who bullied said, well, I was joking. I didn't know they were going to take it, you know, so it is a trickier area to manage. But nonetheless, just because these things are hard to navigate and new, it doesn't mean we don't try and we don't start, and that it may have to evolve as this world evolves. But it does need to be robust, and it does need to have teeth. Otherwise, it's going to be a waste of everybody's money, you know. Yeah. So, like, what we want is that it provides the incentive that it needs to provide. We host a lot of the headquarters of the big companies, the big names here in Ireland.
We do, yeah.
So we have that, I think, additional responsibility to ensure that they are accountable when things go wrong, you know, and there is accountability put in all the right places.
Do you think that, like, a big problem, obviously, with social media is the trolling? You know, anonymous accounts, fake names, no profile picture, you can set up as many as you want. Do you think that if to open up a Twitter account or a Facebook account, ID verification, one account for one person, do you think that would be a way of resolving that trolling problem?
Yeah, it's interesting. And there's been talk of this recently, actually, in the news. I think Sinn Féin's been proposing a motion to address kind of anonymous accounts. And that, for sure, they have been really problematic. And, you know, things like bullying and, you know, it can be very difficult.
Inciting hatred and racism and, you know, and conspiracy theories and stuff like that. Right,
and people hiding behind these fake names and and fake accounts. And I think that you remove some of that kind of fear of, oh, well, I can say whatever I want because nobody's going to know who it is, which is shocking. But the challenge with it, and this is where it's going to be difficult to get the balance right, is, you know, that ability to post anonymously can be absolutely vital in some cases. So if you're living in an oppressive regime and you know that the government is tracking, and, you know, like well, I won't cite cases, but we've all heard in recent years where governments have tracked through photographs, through social media posts, people that they think are subverting, you know, the peaceful,
like Saudi Arabia. I can say it.
Well, there are lots of examples.
Yeah.
And that's the balance. How do we keep that? How do we protect those people who are so bravely speaking out or trying to speak out or trying to share truth? And against this really darker side of people. And then you've got the dark net on top of that, where where there is so little accountability, like you can't
Complete
track
anonymity.
IP addresses, right? So, you make law enforcement's job so much harder. There's so much illegal activity going on. For example, paedophile rings, which we know are alive and active and operating in the dark net and are being tracked, but are extremely difficult to, really.
There's a website which I have never used. It's called The Pirate Bay. The Swedish lads set up this website where there's torrent movies. So if a movie comes out, it goes up on the website and you download it legally, right? But no matter what the police do, it just moves to another. Like that site will never be gone. It can never be gone because it's open source and people can just set it up in other countries and other jurisdictions. And the lads are from Sweden, but and if you close down the site, it just opens up again. .org, .uk, .net, and so is it an impossible job to close down sites like that, or maybe targeting specific sites is probably only part of it, but maybe addressing why would you want to set up a trolling account in the first place? What is it about?
Exactly.
Well, they're trying to bypass the kind of mainstream. They don't, ordinarily we have to pay for those movies or go to the cinema or wait till they get to hit DVD and then pay, 12, 20 euro to access that movie. So it's a way of bypassing. Yeah. But I think, we make law enforcement's job really difficult by doing those things. And, I've heard of cases where they've managed to kind of identify key people in, for example, paedophile rings. Yeah. So there was, I read about a case in Australia, and it was an international ring, but it was months and months and months of really detailed police work because you can't use the technology in the same way. You can't just track them back to this laptop. It's designed to completely mess around with all of that. So they had to wait basically for those people to make a slip and then
pouncing on them then.
And eventually they did. We're humans. We do make do errors, but it's extremely, and that's just one ring. And there were 500 people in this ring. That's 2 people in that ring. Now they were central, so that was, it essentially kind of disintegrated that ring, but still it is extremely consuming.
So what's some of the trend, right? I'm going to introduce Georgie and she's just going to tell us a little bit about herself. What's some of the training? So introduce yourself first, Georgie, and tell us what some of the training
So I'm
is.
Georgie Cooney, so I'm Alex's sister. So one of my jobs is that I am a trainer for CyberSafeKids. So I will go into schools and I will train the children and the teachers at the same time. But I can also do talks for the parents, like many of the other trainers. And I suppose what we go in to do is to really try and give the children skills to protect themselves. So we remind them, for example, of how they can change their settings to make sure they're private settings. And how they can also check their location settings are off, because a lot of them, when they start these new devices or what have you, they often don't realize they're set to public. Yeah. So they're immediately out there, and we say, look, it's like the same thing as going out in the street and saying, hey, this is me. Look at me. Look at all my private life. And it's quite interesting actually how some of the questions they ask, some of the answers you're given as well. If I said, raise your hands if you have a phone in 3rd class, quite majority of them already have a phone, and they, we put up the icons on the screen. Do you know what any of these are? And they'll know all of these social media icons, House Party, Twitter. Yeah. And, some of these ones are open to the public, and, they can be contacted by people, and it's quite terrifying actually, some of the things that you hear, but it's a positive thing what we're trying to do. We're trying to go in there and get and say to them, look, there is all of this stuff going on, but actually here are some ideas of how you can protect yourself. So you can have a phone. We know you've got a phone. Have a phone, but also live a healthy life with this phone.
And you have to be subtle as well in the way you're saying it, because kids are happy and they're playing. They don't understand what's out there really, and how people can really.
Well, this is it, because I think a lot of them actually they have all the right answers, but I don't think they always know the depth to those answers. And so one of my other jobs is that I'm a dyslexia specialist. So I'm the court coordinator for the Dyslexia Association of Ireland. And a lot of children I work with, have some language and literacy difficulties. Yeah. And when it comes to the internet, that can put them in a really vulnerable place. Particularly with this idea that, they can read things. Anyone can read things and misinterpret what it's meaning. Yeah. And so we have to look at, some of the language levels here and work on, the fact that you don't get the subtle nuances over a text, whereas you can do in a conversation. Because so much of the work it's multisensory what I do. So it's visual, it's listening and hearing and trying to help them develop their language levels and then their literacy levels. So it's all kind of combined, the work that I do with CyberSafeKids, but it's just so important that we try and help these children who are more vulnerable, but all children too.
What about this is, I don't know, it's nothing to do with adults, but we all know what goes on with social media. A lot of women, they send nude pictures of themselves to men or boyfriends. Sometimes
and vice versa.
Exactly, yeah. Sometimes they might be pressured into it, and sometimes coerced into it, or whatever it may be. Do you get many calls from young people saying because of these things, and then the picture might have gone on to the friends and the next friends, and then it's gone on to the community? Like the consequences of that, especially for a young person in their teens or whatever. Like, what are the consequences of that on a personal level?
Well, I'll just give one bit of information there, but the only thing I would say is that a lot of them don't realize that if they share someone else's personal information that they've sent them without their permission, then what they're doing is a form of cyberbullying, and also can get them into some serious trouble to a legal point. But I'll let you take over from.
Yeah, well, so now it is illegal to share intimate images.
That is since when?
Since
Alex?
2021. So last year it was that COCO's law was introduced, and the formal name of it is the Harassment, Harmful Communications and Related Offences Bill.
And that's for everybody across the board.
Yeah.
Not just children.
No, everybody. Yeah. And it's, actually, because intimate images of children are already illegal, that was clear. That was already an offence. Yeah. This is for everybody, which is what makes it different. So, if it's one adult sharing intimate images of another, then, that could potentially end them up in court.
Or prison.
And yeah, exactly. Or with a fine or whatever, because it can be with the intention to cause harm, or even without the intention to cause harm. So you could say, oh, well, I just sent it to this one person because, I trusted them.
Doesn't matter the motivation.
It doesn't matter. Now, I think the penalties are less if you can prove that there was no intention to cause harm.
But this is to address the revenge porn.
Yeah, exactly. And really, really important. I mean, such a gap, right? Like when we know so many images are self-produced by in some cases children, and a lot of us are using our devices in this way. And in fact, we have quite high levels of sexting in Ireland, versus Europe. So
we have the highest, don't we?
I'm always kind of dubious, but supposedly we do have the highest levels of sexting. So, and it's a difficult one again to navigate, and especially when you're talking to young people, because, in some senses it is a natural exploration of their sexuality. It's just it's an extension of it. And, at least they can't get pregnant, right? So there are, but it's all around the consequences. Like, where could this go? Do you really trust that this person will not? Because, you could fall out with so-and-so, or, it could go, or someone else can get hold of it. One of the big messages, and obviously we're not talking about sexual images with young children, but about anything, the idea that you might lose control, like it could be just something you're not comfortable being out there. It may not be a sexual image at all. It may just be a provocative image or a mean image or a
screenshot of a text you sent or something like that.
Could be anything, but that's the point. And actually we had quite an interesting insight into kind of the way children think. We did a focus group with a group of kids a couple of years ago, and we were trying to talk about this idea that, when you post stuff on things like YouTube, that the audience, if you don't have it on a private kind of set to a private, you're potentially sharing it with this huge audience, right? So we said to them, okay, if you say you made a video of yourself, just you in your bedroom, not doing anything, but it was just you chatting to the camera, say, you have the choice of saving it to a USB stick and giving it to one stranger in the street, right? Or posting it to your YouTube account. And as I said, we know most kids are not using privacy settings, right, on YouTube. And all of them, without question, really quick reaction, like, no, I'm not going to give my, like a USB stick to one. I don't know the person I'm handing it to. Why would I give it to them? Right. And I said, well, why do you think you've got more control over the one you're posting to YouTube? Mm-hmm. They really strongly felt they did. They thought, well, I can take it down. I can change it. They really did. And we were like, but do you not see that there's potentially thousands of strangers looking at that same video? It's the same video. But it was really difficult. And it really brought home to us how much harder we're going to have to work to get this across. And, and like Georgie was saying earlier around, they know it, but they're not always applying it. So you'll ask a group of kids, should you be friends with people you don't know online? You don't know offline. And they'll all be like, no, you shouldn't. Right. Yeah. And then later on in the conversation, you'll talk about social media maybe, and you'll say, well, do any of you have friends or followers on your accounts that you don't know? And there'll always be a proportion of children, maybe a third, who say, yeah.
And they'll often say that it's a friend of a friend. Oh, but my friend's friends.
It's mostly a friend of a friend. Yeah. So to them, that is safer. It's one step closer. Right. Yeah. But the reality is, a friend of a friend, you don't know them. You don't know them. Yeah. And that's not to suggest every single encounter with someone you don't know online is sinister. But the point is, unless we know for sure who this person is, it's really better that we're not.
Are we going up against like the fundamentals of human growth and development, where when you're an adolescent, you don't have the foresight to abstract thought, to play the long game, to like a consequence of giving you a speech stick to a stranger? I can get that because I'm doing it right now. But if I create a video, put it up on YouTube, and somebody out on the internet sees it in time, that's very hard to get your head around that when you're a teenager.
Totally. And I think that some of them, particularly in the primary schools, they don't believe that their friends would do that. They don't think that would happen. They're just like, oh, but my friend wouldn't do that. And you sort of say, well, look, they may not do it on purpose, but you can do it by mistake because you think it's funny. You send it to your brother thinks it's funny. He sends it on, next thing you know, it's gone viral.
But also the potential of that audience to be people that, you don't know, or I think that concept of this big audience where this stuff could go is really hard for a kid to digest. Yeah. And also data, privacy, these are hard concepts, for how many of us tick the box without reading all that? Yeah.
It seems like as an adult that has some awareness around what we're talking about, it's so much easier to just accept all the time, accept that, do you know what, Google has all my information, but how am I going to resist it? Like, I need my Gmail, I need my Google Form.
Don't have time.
Yeah, I need YouTube. Like, what we do is a big part of, all that, communications, stuff like that. So how can you resist that, But one thing I wanted to ask you there, I was thinking, do you know when you get a WhatsApp photo, and men are notorious for this, especially men in groups, pornography can be sent into the group. And sometimes you might know, but maybe the person is underage, but it looks like a woman, but it's really a girl. And sometimes the photos, depending on your settings, that can be uploaded to your Google Photos, where they're stored permanently in your...
on the device, yeah.
Is it illegal to hold that image?
Yeah.
Unknowingly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's illegal to hold the image, and it's illegal to share the image. And actually, this is something we say to kids as well, because I don't think, it's well understood generally that's the case. People have been prosecuted. I don't think that would be the intention of the guards to prosecute kids. Yeah. But it's really important that they understand, and especially now that we have this piece of legislation here, how serious this can be. And if it's an image of a child, we didn't even need that, that was already illegal. So yeah, it is really serious.
Yeah. But the consequence of something like that then for a child, say a teenager, whoever that sends that photograph, right? We all know what happens. Somebody goes to court, they might get a fine, they may get a prison sentence, but the person that owns the image that's gone up online, like, they could potentially take their own life because they mightn't be able to handle the shame of it, the guilt, or whatever it may be. They might start, their mental health might completely deteriorate. Yeah. We all know, like, I watched a film there recently of a girl in the US, can't remember her name.
Amanda Todd? Was it Amanda Todd?
It was about, she showed her boobs to some guy.
Yeah.
And she went away and took her own life. No, she was a vegetable on the bed. And I was looking at that, and I have a daughter who's 15 years of age. And I'm looking at the father who's planning in this film. He's planning to kill this guy that put the picture up on social media. And I could completely 100% understand why this man wanted to take this fella's life. Yeah. Because he's inside in this room looking at his daughter laying there in a coma. She's dead. She's a vegetable. And because of what this guy done, she thought they were friendly, and he posted it on the college campus website or whatever, and it destroyed her completely. And she took an overdose. Like, that must be happening very, very, very frequently, because this is happening a lot. Like, females and males are sending pictures of themselves across the board into groups, you know, thinking that they'll be accepted by one single person, but then a group gets it and they send it, and they don't understand the consequences like we all do here of something like that, because they're young. And
on the other end of it, then I think I remember, and you might be aware of it, I think I remember a court case a few years ago where the guy was prosecuted for having an image of a child in his phone, but it was in a WhatsApp group. That's what I was getting at. It was in a WhatsApp group. He didn't send it. He received it and it stayed in his phone, but he's a sex offender then. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
It's very difficult, and
like that's what you're prosecuted under, like the sex.
It's very difficult, but equally, it's become, there is, you know, and again, you talk to the guards, like the self-generated images has become so overwhelming and so problematic that, you know, they're firefighting essentially. And, you know, trying to find kind of real victims in this case, you know, maybe children that were being manipulated into sending those images, or children where that image went viral. You know, those are the priority cases. But it can be very difficult. And you're absolutely right. For some kids, it can be absolutely devastating end of life stuff. So what I think is really important is that we put, for when those things go really wrong, that we have the right support structures in place and can minimize the harm to the child. There was a great resource in the UK. So this was, that was produced, and it's called So You Got Naked Online. Yeah. And I love it because straight away from that title, it takes away from the horror of what's happened. You know, it's just,
so you're not the only one.
You're not the only one. You know, this stuff happens. Your life will go on after this. You know, it doesn't need to ruin you, you know, and I think that's a really important message. You know, I think also we need to get this message across to kids.
Should it be introduced into the curriculum in secondary schools? You know, because when they're in primary, kids, like what we're talking about here, the understanding of the damages of social media and posting, like, should there be some form of class that kids can take?
It's very hard to make an argument against that.
You know? Right. Because, like, the way we're going, it's taking completely over society. Let's be honest. All these different social media sites, the Instagram, Facebook, I don't even know how to pronounce them properly, the Instagram, I call WhatsApp, they're taking over society. Kids, adults, everybody's at them. Guilty myself at times there, you know. But should we start educating our children a little bit more around the dangers of social media, the dangers of putting pictures up of yourselves? Because there might be a story today, 6 months down the line, everybody knows about it. Say 6 months down the line, we forget about it, and somebody else comes along. You know, I think there needs to be more stuff around that.
Well, the only thing I was going to just add to that as well is that, you know, that so many of some of the kids that I work with, or some of the kids who take things very literally as well. You know, there's a lot of positive to assistive technology and to some of the apps that are out there, but some of them are linked to social media and to the public, and it's very, very hard to get across that you don't have to take some of these things literally. You don't have to copy that. It doesn't need to look like that. So I definitely think there needs to be some kind of education along those lines added into the curriculum about the language that's used as well, and what is acceptable, and what isn't acceptable. But I know you've probably been doing some.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it should be in the curriculum, even at primary school, 100%. Yeah. It should be the 4th R: reading, writing, arithmetic, digital literacy, and online safety. Because children are living out so much of their lives online, we have a duty of care towards these kids, that we're preparing them adequately. You know, whether it's talking about respectful online communication, or, you know, good netiquette, or, you know, taking responsibility, consequences.
Netiquette, I like that.
Netiquette. Yeah, well, it's a word that we would use a lot, because I think so many times, especially with cyberbullying incidents, we've come across, you know, children maybe one child said something to another kid that had they said it in the yard in passing, they'd have probably got away with it. You know, it wouldn't have become a big thing. It does not translate well. And maybe a mean comment about somebody's hair, for example. A throwaway line in a yard.
If you use the wrong emoji at the end of your sentence, it completely changes the context.
Use it in a public way. So if you're posting it in a public way, say on the class group, right, and you've said something mean, it's there. It's hard to ignore. Then you got other kids jumping in, what we call bandwagoning.
Are you going to take that? And,
or worse. Yeah, I agree. And then, but then you take it back to the original kid, and you said, you know, maybe there's an incident and you're trying to unravel it, and somebody's been really upset by it. You know, the original kid may well say, and I've heard this said many times, but it was just a joke. And that's the challenge. And, you know, I didn't realize all these other people were going to come in and say, and it's like, but you have to take responsibility. It's not the same as me saying something to you, and you reading my intention and my tone, and you're saying, okay, she's messing with me. I know that because I can see that. It's not the same. You can't, you know, like written type, it's there, and it's hard to erase. And
we also say be an upstander, not a bystander. So, you know, if you see all of this going on, you know, do something about it. That standing by and just watching is not okay either.
Or slinging a bit of mud in as well.
Or slinging the mud, or jumping on this bandwagon. We talk a lot about bandwagon.
Well, and you know, bystanders can make or break a bullying situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So they can make it continue by doing nothing and by telling no one. Upstanders can break a bullying situation. So what we need to see, and there's so much evidence that this works, you know, where you encourage everybody in the school community to be upstanders, whether it's the lady at the lollipop lady, or, you know, the person driving the school bus, or whoever. Everybody in that community is so clear on the bullying policy in that school, you know, that upstanding is a really encouraged culture. It can make a huge difference in the bullying in that school.
Have you had conversations with the Department of Education?
So we've had lots of conversations with the likes of Webwise and others who are doing some fantastic work, and they come under the aegis of the Department of Education. But it is tricky. I mean, the department, they will say, you know, this is covered. It is covered. We do have content on online safety. And I suppose what we're saying is it just needs to be stronger. It needs to become a more core part of the school curriculum. Again, it's going back to that 4th R, the priority that we give to reading, writing, arithmetic, and Irish in our curriculum.
Junior sort and even sort for it to be real.
It needs to be.
Right.
It is a core life skill. If you think of, we're growing up in the digital age, our kids are growing up in the digital age. So much of our lives are digitized, you know, whether it's banking or shopping or communications. And then in lockdown, all of that was exacerbated. We were working from home, learning from home, you know, but there is this other responsibility to ensure that we're all well equipped. And it's not just children. Children are the most vulnerable users, but it's not just children. I mean, it's older people as well. Ensuring that they can stay part of this digitized society.
Well, a lot of the parents are always just saying, like, thank you so much. At the end of these kind of CyberSafeKids sessions that we do, they thank you so much. We didn't know so much of this information. You know, it's for many reasons, because so many parents are busy. They're busy trying to earn a living and, you know, provide. And it's very, very hard to keep an eye. And
it's the simple things. And I think that's one of our objectives with our parents' talks is that parents will walk away from those sessions with just even a couple of things they're going to do differently. You know, okay, my kid's all over TikTok. I'm going to really get to grips with TikTok. Right. I'm going to really understand it and start taking an interest in what they're posting, and maybe talk to them about what they're posting.
Maybe do a dance or two.
Oh, but you could do a dance or two. But I'm going to first of all make sure that they're only sharing their videos with their friends, you know, and I'm going to check their friend list, you know, because especially TikTok's hugely popular. Like, you might have 9-10-year-olds younger, as we talked about earlier. You know, we need to keep an eye on what they're doing. And I think that's such an important message. And it's not about sitting next to them for 24 hours a day. That's not realistic for any parent. But make your life easier. Have them on their devices in the sort of family spaces, kitchen, living room, not up in their bedrooms behind shut doors, where you really are completely excluded from what they're doing.
Things blow up on TikTok really quick. Do you remember Shane Sullivan? A former friend of ours from Knocknaheeny. He was on the podcast, but he did a gender reveal, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And the thing had 2 million views in a couple of days. On TikTok, he couldn't believe it.
No way.
Yeah. 2 million, like, Jesus Christ. But things just blow up, and like, when stuff goes out there, that can be very overwhelming if what's out there you don't like. Do you know what I mean?
God,
If
really?
people see us, if 2 million people see a site to you that you don't approve of, or that you don't like that can be very hard to come back from, you know?
Absolutely. And I think we also have to be realistic. There's a lot of content out there we wouldn't want our kids to see. You know,
Pornography is
pornography is the big
didn't
one.
the New Zealand government, they invested a ton of money into a very good
A brilliant
collection.
campaign. Yeah. So we're launching this campaign tomorrow. This is like a tiny drop in the ocean. What we'd love to emulate is this fantastic New Zealand government. And I emphasize it was the government that put it out
What's
there.
the Prime Minister's name again?
Jacinda Ardern.
She's great. Isn't she?
Yeah, she is great. But this is their initiative, which means they're putting loads of resources by it. But they produced 4 ads, right? And it's under this campaign name, Keep It Real Online. And the first one has 2 porn stars walking up to a front door, right? And it's done with humor, which I think is essential, right? It's an awkward topic. They're totally addressing it head on, but using humor. 2 porn stars walking up to the front door. Woman opens the door with like she's in her toweling wrap and head in a towel. And they're like, your son just looked us up online. It is just so well done. And he's only 11. And then the kid comes out carrying a breakfast bowl. And then they're like, hi, Sammy, and it's like, he looks him up on your phone, on the iPad, on the game, on the.
That's brilliant.
We just thought we'd let you know.
And the tagline is, because they were like, we don't talk about stuff like consent or, we just thought you better, and the end of it is, okay, we need to be realistic. Children are going to come across content that like this online. And therefore we as parents and carers and educators, we have a responsibility to talk to kids. So that this is not they're not learning about sex education from pornography. It would be like kids learning about healthy eating from fast food. We need that real balance so that kids are questioning everything that they come from. Is this real? Is this one-sided? Is this,
if they are
misinformation, disinformation?
Is consent? Did she consent to that? Because we need, unfortunately, otherwise we've got kids growing up thinking a certain way about how things are done.
Women need to be submissive, men need to be aggressive.
Right.
Do you know
And
what
women need to look a certain way and accept certain things, or men, it's okay to do this. So, pornography is probably the thing that scares me the most in lots of ways because of how it's shaping young minds and what set expectations it's setting. I have a 9-year-old son. I'm so conscious of that, and I want to ensure that we have.
What's the right age to talk to him about it, though, Alex? Then I have a 10-year-old, and I subtly tried to talk to him about things like that because he does have ways to get onto the internet. He's left a phone on the weekends. Me and my wife work, and he needs a phone for after school so we can contact him, make sure he's okay or whatever. And he goes to his grandparents. What is the right age to sit a child down? Would you be doing more damage at the age of 10? Because
you can get software for the phone, and
you can, but like. I know it's different. I know it depends on the child as well in all these different areas.
You're right.
Do you mean about porn or
about porn and the content,
inappropriate content?
Yes.
So I think the key message, right? Like I wouldn't be using the word like porn with a 9-year-old. I certainly haven't with my son. But my 12-year-old daughter, I showed that ad to, and she was like, "Mom, this is so embarrassing." But actually, I want to encourage this conversation. I don't want her to feel like she can't talk to me about embarrassing stuff and that I'm not going to freak out or that, and I'm going to have to try really hard not to be kind of shocked or like, what? So our reaction as parents is really important. We've got to encourage that we're trusted adults. Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, anything you want to talk to me about, I promise I'm not going to flip out. Talk to me first. We'll work it out together. That's such an important message.
And we talk a lot about normalizing it. So, when I do the parent training, it's sort of, talk about this on a daily basis, not necessarily about porn.
Well, not porn with young kids. No,
about the difficult situations, that come up online. And if it becomes normal, it's not so difficult to talk about. if that makes sense.
And also, I think there's things that we can talk about with young kids, right? Like we can talk about boundaries. You know, like this is your boundary, this is their boundary. If they say, I don't like something, you have to respect that. You know, like if someone's coming up and punching you in the arm every time they pass you and you don't like it, it's your right to say, I don't like it, you know, and that you have this boundary. And I often talk about this invisible boundary. It's yours, you know, and if you say, I don't like it, that should be respected by the other person. And then consent. If they say it's okay for you, you know, for them to walk past and punch them in the arm, that's different. Maybe it's a game you're playing, but consent is really important that you have. And it's like sharing somebody's photograph or, you know, again, have you asked them, is it okay with them that you're sharing this photograph of them? Because so often we're coming across situations where someone took a photo of someone else and it wasn't very nice. And then they posted it and then it got all these mean comments and so on. And it's that thinking before you do, did you ask them? You know, like such an important message. So we can talk about things like that with younger kids. Yeah. And then when the time is right, we need to, you know, obviously we're going to have the birds and the bees talk. Yeah. And we may need to extend that out to, you know, other things we might come across related to this topic. And, you know, biggest thing you can say is it real? Question everything. Talk to me if you're confused. Talk to me if you're uncomfortable. You know, such important. Or if there's another trusted adult in their life, maybe it's not always easy to talk to.
Right, an auntie.
An auntie.
Or a sister.
Exactly.
Would you train youth workers?
We do, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because that can be the adult that's not in the family, and it might be the one to be the most.
And that's exactly what we say. You might be the trusted adult.
I think there's definitely another podcast here down the line when this initiative that you're at the moment gets going. We definitely bring you back down the line and maybe talk a little bit more because
we can talk for hours about it.
Hours and hours.
One thing I wanted to say before we finish up, like it's great to have this cyber safety for children, but I think adults need it as well.
Yeah,
I know two men, right? And we won't get into it because this could go off. I know two men that got caught by people, you know, let's say if a man is not confident or he doesn't perceive himself as being good looking or he's shy, and he doesn't get attention from women, and next somebody direct messages him on Facebook, hey, do you want to chat, blah, blah, before he knows it, he's masturbating in front of the camera, so is she, then he gets screenshots of him masturbating, send money to this account and I'm going to share this with all this. That happens all the time.
Sextortion.
The guards were on Neil Prendeville radio in Cork here a few months ago talking about that, you know, people go into the guard station and they think, you know, do you think that that's an issue for children as well, or is that specifically have you come across that for children?
Oh yeah, like I was talking to Timmy a lot actually about a story that we have on our website, Orla's story, and it was a young girl, and this is exactly what happened to her. And she was 11 when it started, and she told no one for 3 years. She told no one, so she was living this nightmare, sharing material every day because the threat was if she didn't send nude images of herself or videos of herself doing stuff, that he would share it with everybody she knew. And she was so terrified by that she continued. So her parents didn't know. Her parents were sitting downstairs. She took the door handle off her door to stop her parents walking in on her unannounced. And they thought, she literally thought she had no other options.
It's tragic, isn't it?
It is tragic. And there are kids going through that. And these are the most vulnerable. And we have to find a way to ensure that those kids have someone to talk to, someone who can help them navigate through this and making it stop, essentially, you know? And unfortunately, it took this child trying to take her own life for it to end, you know, like that's when it stopped because her mother then found out and then everything changed.
And as a trainer, our message is always, if you're worried about anything, concerned about anything, talk to a trusted adult. Yeah. Talk to a trusted adult. That is the big message.
And share it even. Talk to anybody that you could, adult, but even a friend that you trust that could talk to an adult if you're not able to speak to an adult, you know.
Yeah, so some kids will tell us, for example, they've talked to a sibling or a friend. We've actually, we surveyed kids about this. So we asked kids whether they'd seen stuff online that they wish they hadn't. So maybe bothered them or upset them or made them feel uncomfortable. And 25% of the children we surveyed, and it was almost 4,000 children aged between 8 and 12, 25% of them said that they had seen something online, which is a lot that made them feel uncomfortable, right? But of those children, what's more concerning to me is that nearly a third of those children hadn't told anybody. They'd kept it to themselves. Because that was our follow-up question. Well, what did you do? Who did you tell? Yeah. So most kids are telling parents. Over 50% had told a parent or a trusted adult. So that is great and to be celebrated. But 30% had told no one. And that is a child in a vulnerable age category being exposed to stuff online. Right. You can't, and this is something that we say to kids, you can't unsee it. Yeah. No, and I know it's easy for us as adults to come in and be saying, well, you really shouldn't be playing that game because it's, Grand Theft Auto, it's an over 18s game. So often we come across young kids playing these games, and there's a lot of sexual content in those games, violent content. And they'll be like, why? My dad says it's okay. And it is a really difficult one to counter, right? But a message is you can't unsee it. If there's things that you come across online that you wish you hadn't seen,
take your innocence.
But if an adult hasn't really, if they haven't spoken to an adult and the adult hasn't broken it down and explained it to them in really simple terms, because a child doesn't understand it, they'll continue with that vision or that and the feeling that comes with whatever they saw. It might be fear or shame or guilt. That'll continue and it'll fester into different areas of their life then as well,
And the adult might not know how to.
There was a very good survey done. Now it's a few years ago. It was 2016 of children exposed to porn. So it was looking at 11 to 16-year-olds. So it didn't go younger than that because there's kind of obviously ethics involved. Yeah. But it was asking children whether they'd seen it. And I think they surveyed about 1,000 kids and about half had. And it was really interesting. So half of that number had gone looking for it and the other half had stumbled across it, which is all too easy, right? If you don't have safe search enabled on your search engine, all too easy to come across. But it was the mixture of feelings that evoked in the kids: guilt, shame, excitement, all these different emotions, and it's really important for us as adults to understand these things and how it works. And in order for us to try and prevent it happening or prevent kids being exposed to this stuff.
If people want to learn a bit more about what you do, where can they go?
So we have a website, cybersafekids.ie. We do talks and we go into schools. We have a couple of great trainers in Cork, including Georgie and another trainer, Anne. Yeah. And we do online as well. So, there's really nowhere that we can't get to in one way or another. Brilliant. And we do parents talks and youth workers and all kinds of talks. And then we also have great resources on our website. And plus this short ad that's coming out tomorrow, which is coming out under the hashtag Same Rules Apply. And again, that'll be on our website from tomorrow. And it's cybersafekids.ie/ Same Rules Apply. Brilliant. And they'll be able to see the short video.
Brilliant. Great Pleasure talking to the
Thank you so much, Alex and Georgie Cooney. Thank you so much. And myself and James have definitely been educated here. So I hope everybody that was listening.
And if there's any teachers, youth workers or family, parents interested in learning more, they can contact you through the website or even through us and we can kind of link you together. So
thank you so much.
And happy Easter.
Thank you.
You too. Thanks everyone.
God bless.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.